so much for joining us for Home Buying 101. My name is Claire Autry, and I'm with Oak Capital Group, which is a locally owned mortgage lender. And we have a few industry experts joining us tonight. We have Kofi, who's our mortgage expert for this evening. And we have Julie, who's our real estate expert. So they will be doing most of the chatting. You'll hear quite a bit from them as we go through this presentation. Today's purpose is really quite simple. We just want to give you some facts, some information to help you to reflect on that information and to determine, am I really ready to buy? And if I am ready, how do I get started? So we have broken that down into 3 steps. Again, we just want to make this simple. We want to demystify the process. We know, especially for first-time home buyers, there's just so much information out there. It can really get overwhelming. So we've tried to streamline the process by breaking it down into 3 simple steps. The first thing that we're going to look at tonight is why buy? What are some benefits to homeownership that urge people to make that decision to buy a home, since it is a big decision? The second thing we'll look at is, how do you prepare to buy? Maybe you're not ready today, but you want to be prepared in a month, in 6 months, in a year. So what are those steps that you need to take to get ready? And then lastly, the third piece of what we'll look at is the house hunting and closing process. What does that actually look like? What does it entail? So those are the 3 pieces that we'll look at tonight. And I know you will have questions as we go through, so please type those into the chat box. If those questions are not answered as we go through these 3 steps, then we'll address them in the live Q&A, which will be the last piece of our time together. And thank you to those of you who did pre-register. We had some great questions submitted. So again, if those questions are not answered as we go through these 3 steps, then we'll be sure to address them in the Q&A. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to turn it over to Kofi. Kofi's our mortgage expert for this evening. He has nearly 20 years of experience making home loans easy for residents in Arizona, and he's going to kick us off with that first step, looking at why people buy. Kofi?
Thank you, Claire. As Claire mentioned, my name is Kofi Okyere, and like she said, I've been doing this for about 20 years now. And I've seen so many trends come and go. I've seen lending guidelines change over the years. But one thing has always remained true, that home buying has been a great benefit to lots of clients. And I've seen a lot of times, I've done several loans with Julie, and Julie will tell you, we always have clients, call us and say, hey, you know what? My family member said I should buy a home. Should I really buy a home? And, does it make sense? Does it not make sense? And a lot of times I ask them, well, tell me about yourselves. And a lot of times there are a few reasons why a person should not buy a home. For example, you have people who are moving around a lot. And with clients like that, I said, hey, well, a primary residence might not make sense for you, but you might want to think about an investment property. You have those who, might feel they're not financially stable. And in some cases, it might not make sense for them to buy because it'll just worse, make their financial situation worse. But, if you have individuals paying rent, a lot of times we can talk and realize that, hey, you know what, instead of paying that rent to somebody else, maybe it might make more sense to invest in a home. So there are lots of reasons why to buy a home. There are all the fun things like, hey, be able to paint your own walls any color you want, put a hole anywhere you want to put it, and so on. But for today's discussion, we're going to focus on the financial benefits of owning a home and, what that entails and what that looks like. For a lot of us, we are hoping to, have more financial security, be able to retire early, and so on. And home ownership is a great avenue and a great tool, to achieve that financial security. So I'm going to focus on things today. We're talking about, building wealth through home ownership, building wealth through equity. And I'll explain that a little more. And we're going to focus on 2 things when we talk about home ownership and letting your house work for you. And we're going to talk about appreciation of the property and then saving through paying down your principal. Now, when you look at a home, we'll assume a home that is owned free and clear. Homes do not just sit, the values of homes do not just stay stagnant. In any market, you have people buying and selling, and those economists among us will know that demand and supply, determine the price and the value of a home. So over time, most homes go up in value. Yes, we have those rare cases where that won't be the case, but in most regular scenarios, homes are going up in value. Well, that increase in the value of a home is what we refer to in our industry as appreciation, or whether it's a lending or looking, Julie will talk about it from the real estate portion. That increase in value is appreciation. So there's an example on your screen. You bought a home for, or you have own a home that is worth, 300,000. Remember, we're assuming there's no loan on this home. Homes are increasing in value conservatively anywhere from 3 to 5% every year. So, after about a year of owning the home, you just increased your net worth by about 12,000. Now, most of us don't have 300,000 just lying around to buy a home. So most cases will need a loan. Now, anytime you borrow a loan from a lender, you always hear terms like principal and interest. Well, the principal is pretty much that portion of the loan that, or the portion of your payment that goes towards the loan that, you got from the lender. And then there's always an interest payment. I'm going to keep it simple here. We'll forget about the interest for now. We'll just look at the principal. Now, you bought a home for, let's say, 200,000. Okay, you got a loan on it for 180,000. So that principal is 180,000. But every month you make a mortgage payment, you're paying down that principal. Look at it this way. Don't look at it as you're giving money to the lender, but you're forcing yourself to save. So in the minimum, at the end of your loan term, you have saved that 180,000 that you borrowed from the lender, right? Let's simplify the situation. Look at it over a 5-year term. So that same loan, we borrowed it for, let's say, 180,000. Let's look at a market rate of, let's say, 3%, going rates right now. After 5 years, you don't pay down that loan to about 160,000. So now, you've saved, in effect, saved 20,000. But keep in mind, your home's value is not stagnant. We already talked about appreciation or gaining value in your home, the equity. You'll refer to that as equity. Well, your home is going up in value. So in the scenario we gave, your home went up 12,000 a year. So, 5 years, your home is now gone up in value about 60,000. But you've also paid it down, 20,000. So now you're sitting on an nest egg of about 80,000. If you sold that home and you have 80,000, you can take, invest in a new home and just keep doing that and increase your nest egg. Or over time, you pay down that home. You have a home owned free and clear. You have all that equity in the home based on the appreciation of the home, and then paying down your principal. So that's one thing to pay attention to it. Now, another financial benefit of owning a home is the tax benefits. I know at tax time, a lot of people complain about all the taxes you're having to pay. Well, what if there's a way you can reduce that tax cost? At this point, I always refer clients. When clients call me and ask me tax questions, I'm able to answer them and give them more educated opinion and so on. But I always like for my clients to go talk to their tax accountant. But you can always think of things like this. All the interest you're paying on your loan is tax deductible. If you own a second home or an investment property, well, all the costs associated with running that investment property are tax deductible. Another tax benefit for those who are self-employed is, you can write off the use of your home, as an office, your home office, etc. So those are some of the main benefits of owning a home. Julie, what would you say? What do you think about some of those benefits of owning a home?
Yeah, one of my favorite things is this education piece with clients, especially first-time home buyers, and helping them see that they don't necessarily need to get into their dream house on their first house because of that equity factor. They can more quickly afford their dream house by getting them maybe a condo or a smaller house first, building that equity and using that equity as power for in the future buying your dream house. So I love educating people on that piece so they really see the power of home ownership.
Exactly. And I think that's the biggest thing I always try to teach all my clients and everyone joining us tonight is don't look at your home as a money pit or a cost, but look at it as an investment avenue to your financial freedom. So now with every process, right? I have a 4-year-old daughter. Claire, can you please go to the next slide? Thank you. I have a 4-year-old daughter and she's a master negotiator. I don't know where she gets it. So she'll come to me, for example, in our home, screen time is limited. My wife was a former educator, is not a big fan of screen time at certain ages. Well, Zoe will come to me, my daughter Zoe will come to me and say, Dad, I know you're home early, but I know your phone will keep ringing. I can help you out by going to go watch TV. That way, if a client calls you, you can talk and I won't make noise. Think about it. At 4 years old, she realizes that, hey, you know what? As long as, I can show him the value to him, I will get what I want out of it. That's the same way I always advise my clients to approach the lender. Think about it. When it comes to, most of us, like I mentioned earlier, don't have money sitting around to buy a home free and clear. So we're going to need to go to a lender to get money or get the mortgage for our home. Well, the lender is trying to assess the level of risk that you pose. They want to make sure that A, you pay your bills, you're going to pay the money back. B, you have a source of revenue. And three, you're going to have some skin in the game. So the biggest thing that most lenders use to assess, your level of risk is your credit. We all know about credit. It seems like credit runs everything that we do. Whether we're trying to, buy a car or buy a home, or nowadays we get insurance, we want to look at credit. Why do lenders look at credit? Well, your credit, I'm not talking about your credit score right now, but the content of the credit lets them know, hey, does this individual pay their loans, the obligations on time? Is this individual able to manage money? And that's why they look at your credit score, your credit report. They don't necessarily care how much credit you manage, just the fact that you can manage credit. Now, your score is a reflection of how you manage the credit. So most lenders, you always hear a lender say, oh, well, what's your credit score? The reason why they're asking that is a good indicator, but it's not always your score. I've seen clients with high FICOs not able to get a loan just because, maybe because there's so many things that go into your score. So somebody could have a 700 FICO, but maybe have credit card late and so on. And we'll go down a rabbit hole when we start discussing that. So I'm going to keep this simple today. But for most lenders, they're looking for you to have a credit score of at least 640. Now, there are different ways for you to improve your credit score, and we can discuss that another day, but there's some on the slide for you. The biggest thing is making your payment on time, making the minimum payment due, keeping your usage down to about 33%. And then also, one thing that I always tell my clients, I see clients get in trouble with sometimes is, opening a card, paying it off, trying to get miles or whatever it may be. Yes, it might be benefiting you getting all these miles and so on, but every time you're closing those cards, you could be resetting your credit. So that's something you want to look at. But as long as you show that you pay your bills on time, most lenders will do a loan for you. The next thing that the lenders want to see is that you have stability when it comes to making money. So in most cases, they want to see 2 years of employment history. I always put an asterisk on this because at this point, people always ask me a question like, hey, I just got out of school. I don't have 2 years employment history. Well, as long as you went to school doing something that's related to what as long as you studied in school and a major that is related to the job you're doing, all that schooling counts as your employment history. Now, the history doesn't have to be consecutive. You might have a few gaps. For example, you were working, you took maternity leave, and decided to spend 2 years with your kids. As long as you had good work history before that, and you started working, even if it's just a month, we can use that as well. The biggest thing, though, with a 2-year history, it affects mostly self-employed borrowers. A lot of times, people will start a business and say, "Hey, I make all this money. Why don't you do a loan for me?" Well, keep in mind, you have to think sometimes like a lender, or even think about somebody coming to you to borrow money. Well, if they just got a job or just started a business, how stable is it? Well, the way the lenders feel like the stability, if you can show that, hey, you own that business for 2 years, have good steady income, to average that income and be able to do it for you. And in most cases, I always say most cases because I always call the mortgage industry if and or industry, meaning that there are certain guidelines, but there are always exceptions depending on your unique situation. No two situations are the same. Every borrower has a unique situation, so the lenders are aware of that. But for most cases, they want to keep what is called your debt-to-income ratio, meaning the liabilities you have on your credit report plus the home expenses should not exceed 50% of your monthly income. So that's another thing they look at. Next slide, please, sir. The last thing the lenders want to look at is that you have, some skin in the game. Most people ask, hey, you know what? Why don't lenders just do 100% loan? Or, I miss the good old days of, 80-20 loans. Well, what happened? Was it because from the very beginning, they always required most people to have down payments. They went away from that, brought in the subprime market where people had no skin in the game, and people were very quick to walk away from homes because, it cost them nothing. And then also they won't even think of it the right way. Well, the lenders want to make sure that you have some skin in the game. So, because what does the lender want? They want to make sure they get their money back, right? So if you have skin in the game, you're more likely to pay your bills and more likely to take care of that home and, in effect, they get their money back. So for most loans, you're looking at, a down payment requirement of about 3.5% to 5%. In another session that we'll probably do, Home Ownership 102, we talk about the different loan programs, but just keep in mind, typically you need about 3.5 to 5%. There are exceptions where you can, as a first-time home buyer, you can do it with, 3% down. In some cases, you can get down payment assistance. Okay. Now, every loan has costs associated with it. One of my pet peeves is always on the radio. You always hear all these advertisings that, hey, get a home loan with no closing costs. Well, there's always going to be a closing cost. It's a matter of who pays them, because you have your underwriting fees, you're going to have to, get the property appraised. You need home inspections. Julie will talk about that a little more when we talk about, the real estate aspect of this, or the realtor portion of it. You have your title fees, which the title company is ensuring that, hey, the property is owned, by the right person. Nobody's going to come after you bought the home and say, hey, you know what, it's actually my home, and so on. So those are the things that the lender will look at to make sure that you are qualified to own a home. So at this point in time, people will say, well, what happens next, as I work on getting ready to buy my home? And, Julie will tell you a lot of times, clients will call her and say, hey, I want to buy a home. What do I do? And Julie will say, hey, you know what? You need to talk to a lender first, And why do you tell them that, Julie?
Because unless you're pre-approved, we really can't move forward. We can't be ready to put a contract down, put an offer down, and get you into the home. So we want to make sure that pre-approval, so that we can get through any obstacles that might be in the way, anything that might be preventing you from buying a home. We want to make sure we get that out of the way, and then we're ready to just go and put an offer down as soon as you find a house you love.
Exactly. So a lot of times, when I hear advertising, people talk about, pre-approvals, as a benefit for the seller. I always look at it as a benefit for you, the borrower, or the buyer, because you want to make sure that, hey, you know what? This lender has looked at my information, run it through an automated system. I have an approval that no matter what happens, as long as I told them the truth, because upfront, sometimes you might not collect all your documentation, but as long as you give us all the accurate information, we run it through the automated system, get your approval. So like Julie said, that, whether it's a $250,000 approval or what it may be, that house you see, you can actually afford it, and there'll be no surprises. And, again, on another day, we'll talk about the biggest difference between a pre-approval and pre-qualification, because there are lenders out there who sometimes issue pre-qualifications, which is just a letter that's saying, yes, you're qualified. They might not necessarily do their homework, right? Julie, you've seen situations like that, haven't you?
Yes. And a lot of times with those lenders, they will give you the highest amount possible that you might qualify for, but that doesn't mean you actually can afford or want to pay that high. So this is why I like always sitting down with Kofi and really going over each individual situation, because what you can qualify for and what you want to pay might be two very different things. And that's why I think it's important to make sure you get pre-approved. We know that you're ready to buy, and it's within the price range that makes you comfortable.
Yes, and then with that, Julie, I'll let you take over from here, because I've given you a quick summary of what the lender is looking for, how to prepare yourself, and we'll go into more details another day. But for now, I want to touch on some of those facts, and as we answer the questions, we can talk about specific scenarios. Julie?
Absolutely. I love when clients reach out to me, especially first-time home buyers, and a lot of times they think, I don't know where to start, or I don't have good credit, or I don't have enough money for a down payment, which is why I always pull Kofi in. And it's great to have a good team and a good partner. And the most exciting part is when people realize, oh my gosh, my credit is okay. Or, oh, I only have to do these few little tiny things and it'll boost my credit to put me in a good position to be ready to buy. And, oh, I thought I needed 20% down. I only need 5% down. That changes the whole ballgame for people. So when you reach out to me and I say, hey, let's bring Kofi in, you're not obligated to anything. It's just because it makes a stronger team, and we can really look at everything for your circumstances, so that we're ready to get to this part, which is usually the fun part for everybody, the actual house hunting and going and looking at those houses and being excited. And this part, I think, is the fun part for myself as well as for the clients. And this is the benefit of using a realtor, because a lot of people, we all have Zillow and you can look at houses, but the truth is Zillow is not in real time and it's not up to date. So when you have a realtor, you have access to the MLS. I pay for that so that my clients can have full access and know immediately when a house hits the market. And you'll already have your pre-qualification from Kofi, and we'll be ready to make offers. In this market in Phoenix right now, it's a really unique time. There is very limited inventory, and you need a good experienced realtor to help you navigate how to actually get an accepted offer right now, because you'll find houses go in bidding wars, and they're going right now almost across the board in the Phoenix area for above asking price. So really knowing financially where you are, having a plan at where we're going to go in and start looking at houses, and using real-time information so that we're the first people in there to make an offer to get that closed. And when we do that, it's my job to help make that as stress-free for you as possible, as enjoyable for you as possible, so that you know you have a team, you have Kofi and I here to help answer any questions you have along the way. And when we're looking at houses, some financial questions might come up, and then we just reach out to Kofi and say, hey, if they want this house at this price, it's a little over, can you run some financials right now and tell them what their monthly payment would be? And we can get that instantly when we have teamwork like this. So this is the fun part. And what happens when we finally find that house that meets your criteria, after we talk about all of that and look at a few houses and we're ready to make an offer, this is where Kofi and I start really working simultaneously together. So I like this slide because it shows what Kofi's doing on his side while we on our side are working on the home aspect. So the first thing is I negotiate that offer for you. We get the best possible price, and we get what's called under contract. That means the seller accepts our offer. They're not going to look at any other offers. Now it's just us going through the final sales process. And that 10-day inspection period is really the key to this whole process. We have 10 days under Arizona real estate law to inspect the property, make sure that it's actually the house you want, that we're not putting an offer in on a lemon. I also have a home inspector partner that I will call in, or if you have someone you know, and we do a home inspection, a sewer line scope, termite inspection, pool inspection, everything we need to do in those first 10 days to be sure that, yep, this is it, this house is great, I want to go. When we do that inspection and we're ready to go, we negotiate some repairs. We give Kofi a heads up. He's ordering the appraisal. You can see on the other side, appraisal happens right around the time we're negotiating those repairs. And then you're working with Kofi. I kind of hand you over to Kofi after we've done the inspection period and negotiated repairs. And you're doing all the final paperwork for the finances. And we really wait for that closing date. And right before the closing date, you and I will do a final walkthrough of the house to make sure those repairs were done to your standards. Any repair that is over $1,000 requires a licensed contractor to do. Anything under, the homeowner can do themselves or hire a handyman. So we really want to go in, make sure those repairs are up to what you wanted done, and then we're ready to close. And that's the fun part. You can sign your closing paperwork prior to the closing date. We also partner with title company. The title company is another person you have on your team when you join with us. And the title company records with the county. And as soon as that gets recorded, it's usually the day of closing, sometimes the following day. The best part is I get to hand you your keys to your new house. So that's in a nutshell the process, but just to know that my job is to make it as stress-free, as fun, as easy for you as possible. I'm here to educate you every step of the way. It's my job to know the law, to know the contracts, to know our time frames, to protect your earnest money. And Kofi and I really work together to make sure that happens for you, and that the whole home buying experience is actually enjoyable and not actually one of those top 5 stresses that some of those reports say that home buying can be.
So then while that's taking place on the realtor side, Kofi, what does the lender side look like when that offer is made?
So Julie mentioned that 10-day inspection period. So my biggest thing over the years is to make sure that we're making the most of that 10-day inspection period. Because after that, then the borrower starts really incurring costs, like the upfront costs, like Julie mentioned, appraisal, etc. Now, when it comes to your closing costs, all those are required at closing, but there are certain costs that may come up. And then also your earnest money, the money you put down as good faith with the lender becomes hard usually after that inspection period. So I want to make sure that my underwriters are doing their homework, going through your file, making sure we have a full document, verifying your income, verifying your assets, making sure that we have a concrete approval for you so that your money can go hard without you worrying about losing it, and that there are no surprises. And anytime we have those borrowers who, although we have an automated approval, we feel there might be things that could come up. We want to make sure that during that inspection period, we have that full underwriting approval. That way, they can look at it at the conditions. The conditions are where after the underwriter looks at it, it says, hey, you're approved, but I need this, or that, and want to make sure the borrower can come up with all those things. And then at that point in time, they can tell Julie, yes, I'm good to go, let's keep moving. And then you finish your inspection, get your bills sorted out, we order your appraisal. After the appraisal, usually by that time, most of the time in that 10 days, we have gone through our process where, we pretty much have all our conditions cleared. So basically, all we're waiting on is the appraisal to come back at value. And once it comes in, we're ready to close. I always say on average, we're closing loans in about 14 days. That's because, we have a great team of, processors, loan officer assistants, underwriters, wholesale lenders who are ensuring, who understand, our mission for our clients, so we will make sure that 10-day period, we pretty much have a loan that is ready to close. And then also with the appraisals, especially in the market right now, appraisal companies are so backed up, but we have different partnerships which can, guarantee us appraisals back in about 10 days. So because of that, we're, like Julie said, long before most of your contracts have a 30-day close. So, by that 20th day, we are clear to close. That's a term you always hear in the industry, meaning that everything is done, the loan is ready for you to sign. So by, that 20th day, 24th day, we're clear to close. Documents are the title company, so you can take your time, sign them, take your time to put all your money together, get it to title, and then, Julie will be excited to get you your keys.
And you guys have already started to transition into this one, the actual closing. Julie, anything you wanted to add that we haven't touched on in regard to closing on your home?
Just one of the questions that a lot of clients have right up front is how much cash do they need and at what point do they need it? So I like to say that 3 to 5%, or when you talk to Kofi, that's what you need total to close at the end when you sign. And what you need up front is your earnest money, your home inspection fee, and your appraisal fee. Your earnest money is just part of your down payment. It goes right towards your down payment at closing. Your home inspection, your appraisal fees are things that you'll need out of pocket, and they average about $400 each. So those are the things, you set the earnest money amount. Rule of thumb is it's about 1% of the total price. So we're offering that up front. You're paying maybe $800 in fees between when we have an accepted contract and closing, and then you come to closing with the rest of your down payment money. And you'll know to the penny before closing, because Kofi will have gone over that with you and reviewed that with you. And yeah, we just show up to sign the papers at that point and to wait for the title company to tell us it recorded so I can give you your keys.
Yes, and then one thing I wanted to add to that, Claire, for our clients is a lot of times Julie mentioned that we're all about trying to keep the process simple. Well, with our lending partners, we always want to make sure that we have the money, even before you go sign, we have the money sitting there. So our portion of the money will be sitting there. You're buying a home, your loan is $200,000. The morning you walk into the title company, $200,000 is sitting there. So after you sign, in most cases, companies can record right away and you get your keys. So we're always working to improve the process and make it simpler for you, the borrower.
And one thing I wanted to add, when Kofi mentioned that they are closing with an average of 14 days, and the reason that's so important in this market right now, it's so competitive. Sellers are often looking for that quick close, and that's what will edge out somebody else in getting an accepted offer. And this is why I choose, whenever I have an option, to partner with O Capital Group, because I know that they can close in that amount of time. Other people make promises they can't deliver on, or they only work bankers hours and they're not available to help us when we're often looking on weekends and evenings. So just knowing that we could close in 14 days if we had to really makes a difference in getting those accepted contracts. So that's why I like working with O Capital Group.
And you guys are already transitioning us into some of the questions that people pre-registered and submitted, some of these questions that pertain to what you were talking about. And just a reminder, if you joined us a little bit later and you have questions, type them into the chat. We're going to start with the questions that were pre-submitted, and then we do have some questions that we have our first one. And actually, Jenny, who was our first one to type in a question into the chat, you just won yourself a Starbucks gift card, so I'll connect with you after to get this to you. Thank you for participating. And we have one more random gift that we'll give out, but thank you. Let me go ahead and start with some of the pre-submitted questions. The first one, can my mom pay my down payment? That would be nice.
That's a great question. I know, right? That's a great
Can
question.
she pay mine as well, is my question. Can your mom?
That's a great question. And yes, your mom can pay your down payment. Any relative, can, And I put relative in quotations because they're exceptions. You know, they understand sometimes you were raised by an aunt or a very close family friend. So any relative can pay your down payment. That's correct. And there's no limitations or restrictions to that. It comes in the form of a gift, and then there are certain details that come with it. But yes, they can do that.
And I get asked that a lot. Like, I've saved X amount of dollars. Can my parents or some family member gift me the remaining part of that down payment so we can buy now? And yeah, that's always something that can happen. And any financial question, we just always want to run through Kofi, especially if we're into the transaction, and we want to just make sure that we're making sure everything's the way it needs to be for the lender. So all those questions, we run through Kofi and make sure.
Perfect. Let's look at Jenny's question, which was, what is your favorite part of your job?
You know, my favorite, well, actually, Julie, you take this one first. Actually, the other one first. Julie, go ahead first.
So in addition to being a real estate agent, I've been an educator for the past 22 years. So my favorite part really is working with first-time homebuyers and helping educate them through the process, watching them get a foothold into really starting to grow personal wealth, and the excitement of the realization that they actually can own a home and that it's going to benefit them in the long run. And that, I love that. And the handing over the keys at the end and seeing people happy in their new home.
I agree with Julie 100%. You know, which job can you have where you feel like a genie? I always feel like a genie because I'm making wishes come true, people's financial wishes and dreams of home ownership come true. And then just that, you can't, it's just like, you know, when a kid runs up to you and hugs you, that feeling you get, because you know it's just unbridled emotion. But just seeing grown people just so grateful for the fact they know that their lives have been changed and just helping being a part of that, that just means so much and warms my heart. And that part will never get old. I love that every day. And I'm just so genuinely excited to help my clients reach those financial goals.
All right, the next question, when do I actually get my keys and start moving in? Julie, I think you answered that one, but if you just want to restate.
Yeah, and thank you. Good question. I get that a lot from home buyers. That's their first, when will I get these keys? When? And plus you're oftentimes trying to coordinate moving out of your apartment or wherever you're living now. So as soon as the county recorder records the deed to your house, which the title company does as soon as they receive funds, they disperse those funds and they let the recorder know, they process with the county recorder. We just wait for the county recorder. It's all electronic process. It's usually very quick. And the recorder then sends the title company that notification that we have recorded the house, and then you are officially the homeowner. And I make sure to be as close to you as I possibly can be as soon as that email comes through that it's recorded, so I can hand you your keys. And that's an awesome day. And we will be celebrating that day. I just got a question come up. From one of our panelists. Kofi, can you pre-qual me? So we will be working with that client right after this presentation.
Most definitely, I would love to.
Perfect. Actually, on that note, how much does a pre-approval cost and how long does it take?
That's a great question. So a pre-approval is free. It costs you nothing, right? We, the lender, it's just a matter of you taking the time to give us information. And then for most pre-approvals with my team, we can get them back, a pre-approval back to you in about 2 hours. Let me clarify that. On any day but a Sunday, we can get back to you in 2 hours. On a Sunday, it might take maybe about 5 or 6 hours.
And I will say through experience with working with Kofi, that 2 hours is the high end. Oftentimes I have gotten responses within minutes of requesting something for a client. And I've worked with a lot of people in the industry, and you can't say that about everyone you work with. So you know that you're with the best when you have a team like this behind you.
Thank you, Julie.
All right. We have just a few more, and then again, last call for any more in the chat. Go ahead and type those in. But this one says, about how much money do I need to buy a house, and can I pay anything on my credit card?
Okay, so now that's another great question. Now keep in mind, every situation is unique because every house is unique. But my rule of thumb is your closing costs are anywhere from about 1.5% to 2.5% of the purchase price, and it's inversely related to the purchase price. So the higher the purchase price is, the closer you are to that 1.5%. The lower the purchase price, the closer you are to that 2.5. So to give you an idea, for example, buying a home worth about 200,000, realistically, your closing costs, and I put an asterisk on it because we know the taxes and insurance on the property have a big, effect of those closing costs. But realistically, you're looking at about 4,000, 4,500.
Okay.
Julie, any thoughts?
And also with the closing costs, if that is a concern, that's something that we can negotiate together with the seller. Often, I will say in this current market, it's hard to get the seller to pay what we call concessions. But in an average market where there's a little more inventory, fewer buyers, a little more houses on the market, sellers really needing to push to get their houses sold, a lot of times sellers are willing to pay what they call concessions, meaning they'll pay a portion of that closing cost fee for you in order to get the house closed and sell it. But I do want to put a caveat on that because in this current market, it is very, very hard to get concessions right now. But I do see this kind of leveling out, hopefully in the next few months, this market, and being a little easier for buyers to get under contract. And there are ways we can work with those kind of things with the seller.
All right, and then our last question that we'll wrap up with is, what is your best tip for a potential home buyer?
I'll jump in on that one. My tip is to ask your questions right away and don't wait. I know a lot of people think, oh, I'm not ready, or oh, I need to, or they're afraid. They're just afraid to take that first step and ask us. Reach out to me, ask me. I will connect you right away with Kofi. We will sit down with you. There is no obligation to meet with any of us. There's no financial cost to meet with us. And I would say 99% of the time, our clients are surprised that they can buy sooner than they thought, and they're more prepared than they thought. So really don't let that fear hold you back. Reach out and ask us questions.
I second that. It's never too early to start figuring out if you're ready to buy a home, because you always want to plan. You don't want to wait for the last second, because you'd be surprised. I've had clients call me in the past, oh, my lease is up in 30 days. What can I do to get a home? Well, at that point in time, you've added so many levels of anxiety and stress that the process won't be as relaxed as it should be. So, the sooner the better. Even if you're like 6 months away or a year away, it's good to sit down. We can look at your credit, we can look at your financial situation, we can look at different savings avenue and put you on that course to plan and be ready to buy your home.
And I have an example right now of a client who actually, I believe, might actually be on our watching our presentation right now, but they didn't know if they were ready. They sat down with us. Kofi laid out a solid plan so that they could be ready to buy the time their lease is up in September. So we have several months to work with now. They've been working that plan step by step. They're excited. They show me every month how much money they have towards their down payment. They're working side gigs like door dashing and different things. And at the same time, I'm showing them houses, even though they're not ready to buy yet. It keeps them excited, and they want to look at, maybe they've never owned a home, so they want to go inside. They want to actually physically be in a house and say, oh, I like this, I don't like that. And we're getting them so ready that come September, when they are actually ready to purchase, we will be able to make an offer almost instantly, because they've already looked at homes, they've narrowed down what they like, what they don't like. All their finances will be in line, and we'll be ready to go.
Yes.
So don't do it all on your own. Get help early, reach out, and there's no commitment. Just get the information, take it. Like we said at the beginning, the purpose of tonight, get that information, get the facts, reflect on it, and then you have the information when you're ready to move forward. So that was our last question for tonight. We did have one random gift, and it's going to Griffin, who's one of our attendees. So Jenny and Griffin, I will reach out to you via email and arrange to get these mailed out to you or delivered to you. So thank you guys all for attending. We really appreciate it. If you have questions after the fact, you have the contact information. Reach out at any time. We're happy to answer those questions. But thank you guys for coming, and have a wonderful evening. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Great talking to you all. Have a good evening.